All right, ladies and gentlemen. So tomorrow you do have a test, 25 questions. It's going to be on 30 minutes. I told you we would stick for 30 minutes for 2 weeks, so you have 30 minutes tomorrow. We'll see how we do. And we'll kind of make the decision if we're going to 29 or staying at 30. But we do kind of need to keep pushing, yes? So if we go to 29, then we'll stay at 29 for 2 weeks at least. But we do need to kind of start pulling it down. What do you got?
Are the proxy wars like the reason people are like decolonializing?
The whole Cold War with the proxy wars and stuff like that is a distraction for your British and your American and your French. So people are using the opportunity of their distracted home colonial colony to take advantage of the situation. Okay. So if you haven't submitted your map, I've already put your primaries in, and your focus is due by tomorrow morning at 8:30. Please make sure you have them done. You only have 2 more focuses before you have a writing week, which is just the best news. Okay, but you only have, after that, you only have 3 more focuses, and then you're done for the rest of the year. So a grand total of 5 more focuses. Isn't that insane? It's insane. What do you got, Max?
We're done what we do.
We're going to sit around and hang out and eat junk food.
Yay.
After the AP exam, between when we finish content and the exam, we're reviewing.
So there's no more like writing weeks after this next one.
Max, why would we be taking 3 quarters of the exam as a writing exam and be done with writing? That doesn't make much sense, right? So you would probably anticipate more writing, right?
What do we do after the AP exam?
After the AP exam, ladies and gentlemen, let's be explicitly clear. You're sitting here, movie. You can bring in junk food. Samantha Bennett, over there, sitting, ignoring your existence completely and utterly. Life after the AP exam. And then on your last day, I'll say ta-ta, and you will say bye-bye. That will be our last conversation. Everyone good?
Yeah, what if we say
At the day after the exam, I'm going to throw you a pancake party. I'm going to make pancakes for you. My later classes are 7th and 8th. They're going to get ice cream. But I'm going to hand flip pancakes for you.
In class?
Huh?
In class?
Yeah. No, dude. We're going to hang out before. No, of course in class. I'm going to cook you pancakes the next morning and with all the toppings. And then, I'll do blueberry and I'll do chocolate chip. You still have a test tomorrow whether we talk about this or not. And then my later classes will do an ice cream party because they're in the afternoon. And pancakes would be kind of weird. What do you got, Ben?
Do we have to do the chart and focus? It's the same one.
No, you don't, because I didn't mean to have 2 copies. If you already did, it's not going to hurt you, and you'll see that content on your test. Who can raise their hand and tell me where we left off? Katie.
It's like decolonization, colonization system.
Okay. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to try to move as quick as I can through content. In case you can't hear, I sound horrible. Sound like, as my voice cracks, that's perfect timing. I am going to post my PowerPoint. I don't know if I'll be doing 2 lectures today because that's really a lot on me, and I'm struggling. Yes? Is that fair? Huh? What is that, Mac? Did you say something, Darren? That was Ben. No surprise. All right, here we go. So decolonization, ladies and gentlemen. So when we get to the Cold War, we have capitalism, communism, and all that stuff going. Oh, we're way back here, huh? Breaking up of empires, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we're talking about it, people are decolonization is when colonies are taking the opportunity of the distraction of the colonial powers during the Cold War. Okay, your biggest conflicts are going to be in Algeria. It's going to be a 7-year war. Vietnam is obviously going to be a big one. And Korea. Those are your big ones. Now, there's tons of other ones happening, but those are the big ones.
You say Korea?
Yes. Okay, so when we're talking about it, it's all based on this idea of self-determination. But keep in mind, self-determination isn't the answer. Self-determination has been around for a very long time, yes? World War I. It is decolonization because they're actually getting rid of their colonial powers, which is what is happening now. So that's success. Today in 2022, are there colonies? No. We have territories. The United States is still an imperializing power. Thank you very much. We still have places that can't vote and are not fully legal citizens here in the United States that we control and manipulate and do what we want with. But we do not have colonies anymore. Okay. Here we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about Cold War, cooperation, and rivalry. We're going to get back into decolonization here in a little bit. Okay, did we talk about this stuff? Capitalism versus communism, the actual Cold War? Okay, U.S., Western Europe is going to be all capitalistic, and they're going to all sign the NATO agreement, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Okay, so they're all about capitalistic economy, where people have free market and elections. The next one is going to be your communists. That's the USSR led, and it is also Eastern Bloc. That is all the countries that the Russians got in World War at Potsdam Conference. That is Poland, Czechoslovakia, all of those. What do you got?
So are the Eastern Bloc also the satellite countries?
Yeah, the Eastern Bloc, satellite countries, buffer states, satellite states, all of those terms all describe different components of the same thing. Okay, so a couple things that you do need to know. That in both of these countries, they are led by one country. And the capitalist, who is leading the capitalist nations? U.S. Is that still happening today? Yes. Okay, we are in charge of NATO. We lead NATO. And Biden yesterday came out and made some decisions on behalf of all of NATO. And all of NATO is like, okay. Warsaw Pact is controlled by the Soviet Union. And the Warsaw Pact is the communist countries and all the communist bloc. That's their treaties, the Warsaw Pact. Okay, so what we are seeing, ladies and gentlemen, okay, we do have these satellite countries, okay, or the Eastern Bloc, or the buffer states. Just be aware, it's Eastern Germany, Hungary, Poland, Romania, are all a part of this Soviet communist component, okay? The whole part of it is to support the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union supports them. So they are interdependent, and that is important for you to know. Now, during this time period, you are starting to see communism rising in every country in the world. Oh my God, Miss Bennett, every country? Yes, every country. So if it's every country, does that include here in the United States? Yes. Okay, there are communists who live here in the United States. Okay, still in 2022. They're in England, they're in Germany, they're everywhere, okay? And you're starting to see that the USSR is reaching out and trying to support those countries into doing more. Okay, a couple of U.S. policies against communism. U.S. policies against is going to be containment. Okay, so it is all about wherever communism is, it can stay, but it cannot spread. Okay? And this is going to influence the Truman Doctrine, and you need to know that. The Truman Doctrine is all about containment. Okay? So, any country that was beginning to adopt communism, the United States would intervene. So what did the United States just sign ourselves up for? A bunch of wars. And what would be some examples of some of the wars we get into because of this Truman Doctrine? Vietnam, Korea, Cuba. We have the Cuban Missile Crisis that we get involved in. All of these things are going to be coming because of the Truman Doctrine. So ladies and gentlemen, do you need to know the Truman Doctrine? Do you need to know it's all about containment? The United States says that if it is spreading beyond the Soviet bloc, which is your Poland, Hungary, all that stuff, if it spreads beyond it, the United States is going to interfere. Miss Bennett. Who? Yes. Everything. So, the next thing that you do need to know is the Marshall Plan, ladies and gentlemen, which is implemented immediately after World War II. We just haven't discussed it, so we want to make sure we cover it. The Marshall Plan says the United States will offer $12 billion to help any nation in Europe to build up infrastructure and solidify their economy. So the Marshall Plan is $12 billion the U.S. will give. Why are we doing it, John?
To prevent communist uprisings. 'Cause that's what
Okay, because we want to promote capitalism, correct? Okay, so we're trying to avoid that, Wesley?
Like, start another Great Depression where everyone's
To avoid or start?
to
Yeah, okay, because it sounded like you're like, yeah, let's start a Great Depression. Okay. To avoid a Great Depression, we don't want to have the Treaty of Versailles that's making everyone incredibly dependent. We don't want people having this whole circular thing. We don't want reparations. They're trying to fix the problems of the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, now, it is important for you to know the USSR will force all Soviet bloc countries to refuse. Okay, and that way, they are going to create their own alternative. ComCon. That's all you need. Like, just know that they have their own alternative to the Soviet bloc countries. Why are the Soviets saying you can't say yes to Marshall Plan? Here's our option. Why are they doing this, Alex?
Because they don't want the countries joining America's side.
Okay, but really, what are they looking for, though? Yes, they don't want to
They
avoid.
want full control over the countries.
Sort of. You're not wrong, but you're not right. John?
Well, they need the countries to be dependent on the USSR.
And to be what?
Communist.
Communists. They need to spread communism because more communism makes it easier to be communists and they can intertwine their economies. Okay, that is the huge part. All right. Here we go. Competition due to Cold War. What do you got?
What was the plan?
C-O-M-E, con. Okay. Space race. So this is competition due to the Cold War. Now the Cold War is going to push the world to over-militarize itself, but it's also going to push us to have some really great inventions, like Velcro.
Velcro?
Yeah, why not? Plastic is also pretty sweet. We use a lot of that. Huh?
Ours the Cold War.
Because of the space race is how we get Velcro. Yeah. So there's like a ton of things. Pop-Tarts, Cold War. Pop-Tarts, the strawberry ones with the frosting.
Blueberry.
Thank you.
Legit. Thank you, Soviet Russia. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I didn't mean to get us off task here that bad. Okay, the space race starts in 1957 with Sputnik. Okay, that's the first artificial satellite in space. It's gonna orbit and it beeps. And it makes all of America like absolutely terrified. Like people used to wake up and track it and go out in the middle of the night to see it cross the sky. Now today in 2022, the idea of like getting excited to see something streak across our sky when we can always see satellites moving up there is like obviously, kind of strange. But the world used to stop. Like on the local news, they used to say at this time you could see Sputnik and people would be outside and stop their cars in the middle of the road to watch it go by because it's that much of an achievement. What do you got?
Is it still up there? Like,
No, it crashed.
Oh.
Crashed and burned. Yeah, it was only up there for like a couple years. And then it comes plummeting down and they send up Sputnik 2 and all that stuff. What do you got?
It's not that big, is it?
What?
Sputnik.
I mean, it's bigger than all the other satellites that were up there. As in 0. I mean, in comparison to the satellites and stuff we're doing now.
Oh yeah.
I was just saying, like, I'm thinking I'm gonna see it.
No, you can see it because it was a streak across the sky. It wasn't like blinking. It wasn't like lights or anything. It was just like a white dot going across the sky. So, I mean, you can see it. There's a couple great movies about it, like October Sky. Have you ever seen that? It's a really good movie. It's kind of old. Came out in like early 2000s, late 90s. It's a really great movie about the space race and stuff like that. Okay, it is going to end with the U.S. putting a man on the moon. So we are getting our... there's a really great movie about it. The black women who are doing the math.
Oh,
What is it?
Hidden Figures?
Yeah, Hidden Figures. That's an incredible movie, and that is completely based on fact. Absolutely super well done. If you haven't seen it, it's on Disney Plus. You should totally check it out. And that's about the space race. We were getting our butts kicked by the Soviets for a very long time. Eventually, of course, we win because we put them. Don't even get me on conspiracy theories. I don't want to hear your crazy opinions on it. But we will eventually win when we put a man on the moon in 1968. Okay, now you do need to know the arms race and the mutual assured destruction. Okay, these are the scary things of the Cold War. These are the things that kept people up at night. Okay, there's actually a really great 80s movies about this. It's called The Game, and it's with Matthew Broderick, and he logs into the internet, which is like, it's like movie topic, and he starts playing a game where he's like finding silos and stuff like that, and like planning on which countries to blow up in a certain amount of time. And he logs in and it's like the real thing. And so Russia and then the US government comes in and like, oh my God, what are you doing? And like, it's actually a really great movie. What it is, it's intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. What it is, for the first time, you, ladies and gentlemen, we can send a missile from the fields of the Midwest Iowa and we can blow up Moscow in about 14 minutes. They can do the same. They can do the same. So, all of a sudden, ladies and gentlemen, we don't even need to be in planes. We don't even need to have planes with bombs in them. We can just hit a button and within 15 minutes to a half an hour, we can blow up anywhere in Russia. They can do that to us too. Okay, that is the mutual assured destruction. Okay, that what is going to happen is that we realize that either they start the war or we start the war. Everyone, and I mean everyone on Earth, dies. And we come to that conclusion in the middle of the Cold War. That if it turns into a hot war, everyone dies because it's mutually assured destruction with these ICBMs. That even if you blow up DC, we can still blow up the rest of Russia. If you blow up New York City, we have bombs spread all throughout the United States in these missile silos. Have you ever seen the movies where the corny thing is the guy's in the field farming and all of a sudden you hear "Mrrr," and the big flop doors open and then a big missile takes off? In my head, that's how it goes. I don't know if that's real life, but here. What do you got, Ben?
Is this why they started making bomb shelters?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is why. Up in Massachusetts, they converted a lot of places into bomb shelters in the 1950s. In Ukraine, because there has been an invasion, maybe. Ben got me all riled up when he walked in. They are opening all those former nuclear closets and stuff like that and hiding them and stuff like that and building them now. Okay, so a couple things you need to know is the non-aligned movement. These are countries who are not picking a team on Soviets or United States. Okay? So, these are countries like India, China, okay? They are going to form officially in 1961 saying they don't agree with superpowers. Now, what is the funny thing about this? China is now China's now a superpower, and India is a step below a superpower. They have nuclear technology, they have the population, and they have the GDP to support it. So, kind of funny, but here we are. Okay, now, the challenges of being a non-aligned nation. Okay, what is going to happen is that they are going to, they are caught between these two superpowers, and they have to choose to be completely neutral in both ways. Is that easy to do or hard to do? Hard, which means they're cutting off trade with both countries. Okay, so if you are non-aligned, the United States and the Russians are trying to avoid trading with you. So is that helping you or hurting your GDP? Gross domestic product? Hurting. Okay, so to be a non-aligned officially is actually hurting a lot of people, and we're going to see it's going to be a huge problem. What do you got, Ben?
Are they still like capitalists and communists? Or like not?
What, today in 2022?
No, I mean like then. Like if you were capitalist, were you?
No, most of the non-aligned are capitalist countries. They just don't want to pick the United States. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if this is going to shock you, There's a lot of people in the world, like millions and millions and millions of people who don't like the United States. Did you know that there's a lot of people who think we're bullies and who think we push around our weight and say do things world, and then the rest of the world is supposed to do what we tell them to, and that makes people angry? Yeah, that sentiment, that feeling has been around for a very long time, and during the Cold War, we are screaming at people to do things, and that's not always like the best look. Does that make sense? Like right now, the only successful person talking to Russia is not Biden. It's not Boris Johnson from England. It's actually Macron from France. He's the only one who's getting through to Putin right now, and it's because he has less on the table. Does that make sense? Okay, so the United States is quite a challenging force. All right, effects of the Cold War, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so when the war ends in 1945, Germany is split into two. East Germany and West Germany. Which one's communist? East Germany is communist. They're also going to divide Berlin into 4 parts. Why did they divide Berlin? Who can raise their hand and tell me why they divide Berlin? I've already talked to you people. Elise, why? On your map, you did the city of Berlin. You divide it in 4 quarters. Why? No. What's special about Berlin? Guys, Wesley. It's the capital city. Okay, so they divide it 4 ways. Okay, 3 of them are capitalist, 1 is communist, and that's where we get the Berlin Wall. Okay, so what is going to happen with the dividing of Berlin into 4 zones? We're going to start having the Berlin blockade. Okay, Soviets wanted to prevent supplies from going into East Germany. Why would the Soviets want to block supplies going to their people? Why? Think about it logically. It makes sense. Abby?
They wanted them to be completely dependent on them.
There you go. If the U.S. is giving them supplies, who's everyone going to really like? The U.S. Now, is the U.S. doing this because we're just the greatest people of all time, or we also have our own motives? We want them to like us. We want them to cause problems for the Soviets, because keep in mind, we're also at war with the Soviets, so keep that in mind. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to do the Berlin airlift, which is a huge component which almost causes a hot war. We are going to go and drop off supplies into the east for 11 months. Okay? This is the closest we get to World War III during the Cold War. Yeah. West Zone, sorry. Allies into the West Zones, and we're trying to load them into the East. So the Berlin airlift is the closest we get to a hot war at the start of the war, because we're tempting and teasing the East with tons and tons of supplies. Okay? So this is going to cause many complications. So in reaction to the Berlin airlift, they build the... There you go, in order to keep the place separate. Because so many East Germans were leaving the East to go to the... So in order to keep them in, they're building. Now, are they also trying to keep the supplies and stuff out and trying to keep the propaganda out? Of course, but they're also trying to keep their people in. John?
I thought the Berlin Wall was due to the, or I thought the airlift was due to the Berlin Wall. Like, we did the airlift.
They're coming up about the same time. But we typically say the airlifts with trying to give aid starts just before. So we typically cause that as the cause, and it's the closest we get to war. Max, did you have a question, darling?
So they dropped the airlift in Berlin though, right?
Yeah.
Just the western side
Yeah.
of it. Like,
So, ladies and gentlemen, when we're talking about it, it is going to be built from 1961 to 1989. The wall is going to stand. Okay. And people are going to get killed if you try to crawl it. Okay, NATO. We haven't officially talked about it, so here we go. NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Does it exist in 2022?
Yes.
Yes. Is it bigger or smaller? Bigger. It has expanded. What is Putin's biggest complaint? NATO keeps getting expanded, and Ukraine wants to be in NATO, and that is a huge threat to Russia even today. Okay, so what it is, okay, you need to know. It is led by the
U.S.
U.S., Britain, France, okay, Canada, okay, and then a bunch of other European countries are in it. I need you to really understand the United States and Canada are in it. It's not just European countries. That is really important for you to know. Yes.
I don't care about Canada.
Why do we care about Canada?
Yeah, like.
Because they're our friends and they're so nice.
They're in, like, Cold War.
Oh, they're just hanging out with us. Yeah, they're like Team USA. Okay. More Canadians died in D-Day than Americans. Fun fact. So, to our brothers to the north, there you go. They're hanging out and they're supporting us. All right. So, in opposition to NATO, you have the Warsaw Pact. Okay? It was made in response. So, who started this war of treaties? The Soviets or the Americans? Americans started this whole thing. Okay? Now, keep in mind, World War I is caused because of secret treaties. World War II is caused because of open treaties. Okay? So keep that in mind. It is led by the Soviet Union. You need to know that. It is East Germany, Czechoslovakia. I don't need you to write down, but like your Eastern Bloc countries, your satellite countries. Okay? So, what you're going to see, that these two are going to divide the allegiances of Europe. There will be some non-aligned countries. You know that from your map, yes? Okay, and that's how all of Europe is going to kind of break down. Okay, these treaties are trying to avoid a war. Okay, these treaties were formed in order to avoid the war because if Russia invades Norway, for instance, Janelle, okay, all of a sudden the United States is going to invade. What is happening back there?
Sorry, my phone.
It's okay.
Serial nuts. Yeah.
All right, here we go to the board super quick. On your whiteboard, please tell me, what is it called when we knew if the U.S. and the Soviets went to war, the whole world would be blown up? What do we call that? What's the official term? Dawson. Mutually assured destruction. On your whiteboard, please tell me, what are the two treaties that divide the world? Good. What do we got, Sydney?
Warsaw.
There you go. On your whiteboard, please tell me what conflict is going to bring the United States and the Soviets to the closest to fighting. Good. What do we got? Janelle. On your whiteboard, please tell me what is the official start of the space race? 1957. Good, Natalie. What's the official end in 1968? Good, Elise. Man on the moon. What is the name of the plan that will lend aid to any country in Europe? We will give them $12 billion to rebuild. What do you got, Matthew? Marshall Plan. What is the name of the document that says containment? And if communism spreads beyond the borders of countries that have previously had it, the United States will militarily interfere. Ava. The doctrine. On your whiteboard, please tell me, what is the name of the fancy new weapons that will cause a mutually assured destruction? Good. What do we got, Katie? Yes. Intercontinental ballistic missiles. What do you got?
Is it 12 million or 12 billion?
Billion. Not 12 million will buy you like a can of Coke at this point. On your whiteboard, please. Nope, let's go. Okay, so we have proxy wars. Proxy wars are our next heading. Proxy wars are used for the Soviets and Americans to face each other, but not directly attack, which would trigger their treaty response. Proxy wars are used so the Americans and Soviets can fight, but it won't trigger a treaty response. Like NATO, all of NATO to get involved, all of Warsaw to get involved. That's what I mean by a treaty response. So America and the Soviets can go head to head, but they don't have to get the rest of Europe involved and the rest of the world involved. Okay, the first major one is going to be in the Korean War. Okay, so we are going to have North Korea and South Korea. North Korea is going to be supported by the Soviets. South Korea is going to be supported by the Americans. Who is still there in 2022?
North Korea and South Korea.
Yeah, we're still there. We are still in South Korea. Some of our largest bases off of the United States are still in South Korea. Our largest tactical and military movements and rehearsals we do as a military are occurring in and by the Korean Peninsula, which is pretty interesting. Okay, what you do need to know: in 1950, North Korea invades South Korea, starting the war. The United States and the Soviet Union is going to prop both of them up. What do you think it means when I say prop them up? What does that mean? Stephen, what do you think?
It probably means just like provide aid to them.
Yeah, they're providing aid. We're providing some soldiers. Yes, my uncle Chuck, he fought in the Korean War. Okay, we have very few in regards to how many men actually fought in the war. We have very few Americans go. It's mostly Koreans fighting Koreans, but we do send some Americans into the war. We are going to offer intelligence services and air support. The Korean War, what we're most famous for is burning down villages. Best look or not a great look? Not a great look. Okay? So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, it is going to be Douglas MacArthur who is going to lead the war. Okay? And he is going to have the support of the UN. Okay? Now, is this a big blow to the Soviets that the UN is supporting? Yes, and that is a huge kind of component. Now, it ends in a stalemate. How's it looking today? It's the same. It hasn't really changed much. Okay, so it's really been frozen since 1953. The line is frozen since 1953, and you need to know it's a stalemate. Okay, with a demilitarized zone. What's a demilitarized zone? No one goes in, and all the military have their guns propped up and like ready to shoot anything that goes in there. What do you got?
Is this like the times when the North Korean dynasty started? Like Kim Jong-un?
Yeah, this is all of them, which we're really going to focus on the second part. Right now it's just the war, and we're just kind of talking about it in a big way. When we start doing decolonization, because Korea is part of the Japanese and they're going to lose, that's really next week. We're going to go into Kim Jong-un and doing all that stuff. So we're just doing an overview, and next week we'll get into the details. Abby, Vietnam's next.
Are Russia and North Korea still friends?
So the Soviet Union is going to crash. Right now, North Korea's best friend is China. But guess who's Russia's best friend?
China.
China.
So they're like,
They're still close.
So they're like the next people.
Who?
Russia.
And Russia and China are going to be on the same team with whatever happens. Okay. All right, the Vietnam War. Now, the Vietnam War is really going to take off. Okay? Same type of thing. North is going to be communist. The South are going to be capitalist. Okay? Eisenhower is president. And he is going to use the Truman Doctrine in order to talk about containment. So this is the first time we actually use the Truman Doctrine. Now, in the Korean War, we don't use the Truman Doctrine. We use UN to justify interference. It is the Vietnam War that we're like, yeah, let's go. Okay, so you do need to know that Eisenhower starts the war, Kennedy makes it worse, and Johnson is going to make it a bloodbath. So, ladies and gentlemen, if we have 3 presidents I just named, How are things going?
Yeah.
Yeah, things are not going well. Now, the reason is because there's a couple big things that are going on. First of all, the communists are going to win. In case you didn't know, Vietnam, we lose Vietnam. We also lose Korea. It's a stalemate, but it's a loss. You don't win a stalemate. We're going to lose Vietnam. It's because the Southern government is also not going to be democratic. They don't want to be democratic, and that's not something they're interested in. Okay? Now, you do need to know that President Johnson is going to use a new justification for the war called domino theory. And this is a term you absolutely need to know, and you need to put a box around it. Domino theory is the belief that if one country goes communist, then they all go communist. So keep in mind, we've already issued the Truman Doctrine that says we have to contain communism where it is. Now we have the domino theory that says if wit spreads, that is going to cause more countries to spread, and that is by Johnson. So, because of that, Johnson is going to send more troops to Vietnam. How does that go? Yes. The war in Vietnam is a terrible war of attrition. What do we mean by a war of attrition? What does that mean, John?
There are a lot of atrocities.
Yeah, and what's attrition mean? Oh, God, guys, we got to work on your SAT vocab. Oh, jeez.
I have no idea.
Oh, no. John?
Does it have anything to do with like chemical warfare?
Well, that's going to be part of the causes. A war of attrition means it's very slow moving and a lot of deaths. So what world war is also known as a war of attrition?
World War One.
World War One is known as a war of attrition. It's very slow moving and a lot of deaths. Huh?
The trenches.
The trenches and all of those types of components. Now, all right. Cuba is where obviously we're not ending the Vietnam War right now. You know that, yeah? We just send more troops there. We're going to pick that one up. Okay, Cuba. Cuba is going to fall in 1959 to communists. Oh my God, that triggers both the Truman Doctrine and domino theory. So our two worst nightmares, ladies and gentlemen. And it's also 90 miles off the coast of Florida, which is super scary. And who is helping Fidel Castro?
USSR.
Russia. Okay, now this is a huge deal. Now, immediately what happens is that Cuba starts nationalizing all of its companies. Which, guess who is dependent on a lot of those companies? Guess who has a lot of companies in Cuba? Does anyone know what is the most famous company to leave Cuba during this time and keep producing? Jackson?
Is it the Ybor?
No.
Cuban cigars?
No, it's cigars.
Is it Don't Peaches?
Bacardi rum. Bacardi is Cuban style rum, but they leave in 1959 and they move to Puerto Rico, where they are currently producing Cuban rum in Puerto Rico. That is one of the largest companies to successfully transition. Now, U.S. is going to break all trade with Cuba as a penalty for turning communism. This is it's an embargo. You need to know that term. Okay, it's an embargo. And it technically is still in place-ish today in 2022. We did loosen it up a bit in 2018, but it's still pretty there. If you're of Cuban descent, you can go back to Cuba and visit family and interact in Cuba. If you are super white like me, who has no Cuban descent, you're not allowed to go unless you're Beyonce or the Kardashians. They got to go. But right now it's only familial ties. The United States government will allow to go. Unless you have lots and lots of money, then those don't matter. Dawson.
Who's the leader of Russia?
So we're going to get into the order once we get through into next week, but right now it's Khrushchev. Okay, so Nikita Khrushchev is who is in power during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
We're learning about that in AP.
Yeah.
Nice. Does this all sound familiar?
Yes.
Okay.
They're starting to
Well, that's good. Well, we're in modern, so that's good. What do you got?
Did we embargo Japan during World War II? Is that the same reason?
It's not embargo. We did sanctions. We were punishing them. With an embargo, it's a complete and utter stop. Like, complete and utter. Which is why Cubans have... so, a lot of people in Latin America hate Cubans. Because Cubans have rights that no other immigrant here in the United States has. If a Cuban touches American soil, like stands on the ground, they can stay as a way to try to punish the Cubans, so to attract Cubans to leave. Well, think about it. How many other Latin American people try to come to the United States all the time? A lot. And they get rejected. Even if they're in the country, they get sent back, all that stuff. But we grant every Cuban who stands on American soil access. Now, if we find Cubans out in the water, we put them on a boat, does that count? No, we send them back at that point. But if they make it to American soil. Now, Cuban Missile Crisis, so we gotta go. Bay of Pigs in 1961. So keep in mind, Fidel Castro is going to take over in 1959. 1960, we're going to do an embargo. In 1961, we have the Bay of Pigs. JFK is going to offer assistance for Cubans to retake the island. We're going to train them. You need to know this. Train them. We're going to give them boats, and we're going to give them air support. That's the kicker right there. On the day of the actual invasion, JFK gets cold feet and refuses to send the planes. So we send about 2,000 Cubans, armed and trained, to Cuba. Guess what happens to them? It's a complete slaughter.
Wait, we offered them that?
We offered them air support. We said that we would bomb over them and let them take the beach and stuff like that. JFK got cold feet about 45 minutes before the attack and pulled it. And then they all got slaughtered. And it also gets red paint on our hands saying that we were trying to interfere in Cuba. Yes? We're trying to overthrow a coup. And who is supporting Cuba? This is going to be a huge direct confrontation with the Soviet Union, which will directly cause the Cuban Missile Crisis. And you need to know that. The Cuban Missile Crisis. The Soviets began supporting Cuba with ICBMs that are aimed directly at... Yes. Okay. In 1962, the Soviets sent Cuba a nuke.
Yay.
Because at this point, you couldn't send a nuke via ICBM. A nuke still had to be done in a special way. Don't ask me. Don't quote me on what it is. ICBMs could just blow up like a couple square miles and stuff like that. You could kill most of New York City. With that being said, you couldn't do nukes. However, if you are doing a small range from like 90 miles, guess what you can do? A nuke. So, for 9 days, we do it. 13 days, just kidding.
Basically, the uses are simple missiles.
So there is still a good amount. No, it's not.
We said ICBMs.
So there's only a little bit more. Yeah, I'm going to post it. There's only really anti-nuclear. We're pretty good. A Bay of Pigs. Because the United States were trying to overthrow a communist government supported by the Soviets. So the Soviets are obviously pissed, right? So they began, well, they were supporting them before, but now they're sending heavy weapons like ICBMs, a nuke in 1962, and they're only 90 miles away, so they can hit anywhere in the United States. And that's the threat.
So weird. Yeah.